There was nothing else at all in the whole world but football.
Hi and welcome to the Triple F for another episode of Under the Floodlights. A good friend of mine, Oliver Gough, is on to talk about his favourite Leeds United player, David Batty. As a lifelong Leeds United fan, he tells me all about what the midfield general means to Leeds, whether he was more of a physical than a technical player, and what effect the penalty miss in France '98 really had on him. So, without further ado, I hope you guys enjoy as David Batty goes under the floodlights.
Yeah, man, it's great to have you on to talk about David Batty, because that's a player that I really used to admire as a kid, and I think, like, I don't know if you have this as well, but I suppose I would say as a child, but I mean even sort of going into my early 20s, I always somewhat wanted to model myself as a David Batty type player, as a sort of midfield general, wanting to sort of control the game, be tough in the tackle, and sort of progress the play up the pitch as deep as possible. Until I realised I'm much better out on the flank, so I never really realistic as being a David Batty type of player.
It's interesting there, because you dropped in a couple of cliches. And I found myself, when I was rethinking about this, I found myself sort of doing the same sort of thing, you know, saying how he's fearless and underappreciated and things like that. And I think actually that's why people like him so much. And that's why people from other fans of other teams can like him as well, because he's the sort of player that would be out there kicking other players, you know, kicking the opposition, and he's doing probably the only thing that, as a non-professional footballer, you could probably stretch to believing you could do. Like, he's you on the pitch.
Yeah.
And when, like, it doesn't matter if he's playing for England or he's playing for Leeds, when you see someone like going for a tough tackle, if it's your player, you're like, yeah, get in. And if it's the opposition player, you're like, I hate him, but I wish that's what my players were doing.
Yeah.
So it's, I think, like a begrudging respect. I think respect is probably the right word.
So was he essentially only a workhorse, or do you think there was sort of more to his game than that?
No, there was definitely more to it. He could pass. He could definitely pass. He was. It's interesting because he actually has a really interesting autobiography, and I don't want to say he doesn't pull any punches, but he's very honest in it. And I mean, when he first started at Leeds, he got into the first team when he was 18, and Leeds legend Billy Bremner was manager, and Billy Bremner saw a lot of himself in David Batty, and David Batty, he looked up to Billy Bremner, you know, absolutely idolised him.
Yeah.
And his role in the team when he first broke through was Euro midfield, cover as much of the pitch as possible, win the ball, you know, get on it, move it around. Goals weren't ever really a thing in his head. And then Billy Bremner was sacked and Howard Wilkinson came in, and Leeds sort of changed the way they played and became a bit more of a long ball team. And this is something that David Batty is he's like I said, he's very honest in his autobiography. And he says how we went from being a passing team, which I really enjoyed, and that's really suited me. I enjoyed passing, to this sort of long ball team. And his role are very much changed in that team, where his job was to mop up. He would get on the opposition, get the ball off them, and pass the ball to someone else. That became his role. And kind of you look at like how Leeds sort of set up in that first year or so under Howard Wilkinson. They played like that, and then they did shift a little bit where he became what you alluded to. I can't remember exactly what you said, but where he became that almost back four protector. And I think that's why he was quite coveted, because you've got to remember that when he left Leeds, he went to Blackburn, who then won the league.
Yeah.
Admittedly, he didn't play very many games, but Blackburn were, I don't know if this is actually true, but Blackburn were perceived to be the richest team in the country, because Jack Warner was spending loads of money on, I don't know, I can't remember who did he buy. Stuart Ripley, I think, cost a lot of money. Alan Shearer,
Tim Sherwood,
and Chris Sutton.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there were some Paul Warhurst. I don't know how much he cost.
Yeah.
Colin Hendry, Tim Flowers. They probably didn't cost much looking back now. But if you compared their spending to other teams, they spent a lot more.
Yeah.
And one of the last players they bought before they won the league was David Batty, and they spent like 3-ish million, which was a good amount. It was a good amount of money then. Remember, Leeds sold Cantona to Man United for like one and a bit. So
yeah,
he's through 3 Eric Cantonas. He was a dedicated, tireless midfielder who was more than just a hard tackle. I know we're going to come on to it later, but I do have a favourite assist of his. And obviously, to assist a goal, you need to pass it, and it's like a perfect pass. And it was in the Champions League in 2001, and against Anderlecht, and Leeds were already 2-0 up, and it was just for half time. And I checked all this out when it was, and just for half time, and there's the ball sort of comes to a group of almost almost unmarked Leeds players just inside the Anderlecht half, and some lovely little one-touch passes, and it just comes to David Batty, who for some reason this is the second furthest forward player.
Yeah,
you would never expect him to be there.
No,
and he plays when you sort of watch it without really looking at it, he plays just a through ball for Alan Smith, and Alan Smith dinks over the keeper. It's lovely, like one of those scoop finishes where he flicks up over the goal. It's a lovely finish. But then you watch the pass again, and it is perfectly weighted, and everything about it is exactly what you would have wanted if you were Alan Smith, because it actually sort of stops almost in front of him and gives him like a split second where you can see he's thinking, what do I do next? And he's like, okay, I'm going to scoop over the keeper. And it's such a beautiful pass. It's a really lovely little move. But that pass is, he could definitely do more than just rough people up.
Yeah. So that pass is not really something you would attribute with I think I coined it midfield general, defensive midfielder.
Yeah. I mean, he wasn't normally that far on the pitch, but he definitely had it. He definitely had it in his locker. And I'm going to touch on something I know we're going to come back to later as well, but another reason why he was quite happy to take that penalty in France '98 was because he knew he could kick a ball. He knew that he had a touch on him.
So what happened then?
Apparently he changed his mind at the last second,
which is schoolboy error.
He spoke to Alan Shearer before he went up and said, I'm going to smash it down the middle. Majority of keepers will always move, so I'm just going to go up and smash it down the middle. And he said, I stepped up and literally changed my mind at the last second, and he dived exactly where they'll kick the ball.
It wasn't the worst penalty, because I think it doesn't. It's like when you think of penalty misses, and maybe it was because of David Beckham that sort of took the flack from Batty. So I think a lot of people tend to blame Beckham more for his foul rather than sort of blaming Batty for the miss. Maybe that sort of takes away. But also, if you sort of compile the infamous England penalty misses, like Southgate is number one, Stuart Pearce, Chris Waddle, they're the ones that are at the top of the list. You don't really think of Batty's penalty miss that much.
I know. I've been thinking about why that is, and I think there's a couple of factors, and I think one of them is he didn't seem too phased. He obviously, it was a massive moment, and and there was a lot of pain and anguish. But I don't think he was too fussed. He said after the game something along the lines of, "I would have felt worse had I not said I would take the penalty than I do that I missed it." If that makes sense. If he didn't have the courage to take the penalty, he would have felt worse.
Yeah.
But I think also
quite
penalties were
admirable.
quite new, weren't they? Penalties were quite new in Italian 90. They were quite a new thing. Penalty shootouts.
I think so. Yeah.
So it was, and we unexpectedly got to the semi-final, played really well, and that Waddle penalty, I swear that never came down. Whenever you see it, it just you definitely don't see any downward trajectory on the telly. It just shoots out.
I think that has to be the worst. I think because Southgate's is saved. And what happens to Pearce? Does his go over the bar as well? I can't remember.
I feel like it was saved.
Yeah.
I think it was saved.
The fact we can't remember it, that's probably,
So, I think the Waddle one was the last one, wasn't it? Well, the thing to remember as well, in that penalty shootout, Paul Ince missed his penalty as well.
But Batty's was the penultimate though, wasn't it? It was the last.
Yeah. It was the last one. It was never taken a penalty in his life.
Yeah.
And Glenn Hoddle said something like, "Bats penalty?" He was like, "Yeah, boss, sure." He apparently really, really, really loved Glenn Hoddle as well. He always says he was the best manager he worked under.
Well, I think a lot of players share the same opinion, like Hoddle, and I think a lot of fans as well. A lot of fans really regard Hoddle as one of the great managers, and I do as well. I think he was a fantastic England manager. It was just the whole faith healing side of thing when that was sort of brought into it, that just really tarnished his reputation, which is a shame.
Very strange. I still don't think I really know what that was about, or it was. Yeah, I don't know. There were some comments I think attributed, and it was all over the front page of the newspapers. And
I think had that happened during today's day and age, you'd have much better PA, wouldn't you? I think the PA management on that would be a hell of a lot hotter. I don't think any of that stuff would be allowed to sort of.
Well, that was, I think, around that time. The press around England was horrible. Like they've even some of the ex-players now retired and stuff have said that a lot of those England players were scared while playing for England. They were scared they were going to have a bad game and get slaughtered in the press and stuff. It's horrible to think that, really. But yeah.
I think that's something you have to give Gareth Southgate a lot of credit for. I mean, tactically as a manager, I've got a lot of criticism towards Southgate. I'm not too fond of the way he plays, but in terms of how many times is he going to play a right back in Kyle Walker at centre? Yeah, do you want it in your squad, man? Come on. But and how many times do you want to play with three at the back? Like, just get over that formation. We can play four at the back, Gareth. But anyway, what I will give him credit for is the fact that he has kind of repaired the damage essentially between the media and England, and I think the media have a lot more respect and a lot more leniency towards the team, and I think there seems to be a better relationship between the press and England, and I think that's we talk about 98, and I mean even before with poor old Bobby Robson, bless his heart, but England absolutely tore that man apart.
If you're enjoying Under the Floodlights, then you might enjoy our other podcasts. The Triple F Show is jam-packed with general football discussion. The Magic Of is a show which profiles special clubs from all over the world to find out all about their history, culture and their fan base. And the Triple F Cinema is where guests and I review weird and wacky football films.
Essentially, I should have really started with this question, but I mean, why was it you chose David Batty? I mean, is he your favourite ever Leeds player?
Yeah, I think he is. I mean, Lucas Radaby's pretty close, I think, and probably Gary Speed, and then you've got Nigel Martin, Brian Deane, and Yeboah not far behind that, I don't think.
Yeah.
Quite like Gary Kelly, you know, the list. Yeah. Could name a whole team if you wanted. Yeah, you know, I know exactly why it was as well, and it was because he was small and blonde, and when I was little, I was small and blonde, and I think it comes back to representation. If you see someone doing something that you like, you're going to relate to them. And also, my blonde hair changed color eventually, but and then I can still remember having like a poster. Like, it wasn't really a proper poster. It was like a page torn out of Match magazine of him.
Yeah.
I used to have on my wall. I used to.
I had quite a few of those as well, my friend.
Share a bunk bed with my older brother, and I didn't have many things on the wall. I was on the bottom bunk. Didn't have many things on the wall, but one of the things I did have was a little torn out page of Match magazine of David Batty. And I think that he just sort of he seemed to kind of enjoy playing football. I mean, I know that a lot of when I would have seen him when I was small would have been on end of season review videos, and in fact I probably saw him play more for England on telly than I would have done Leeds. And then I mentioned Match magazine, and that was like something I used to read all the time. I was in a fortunate position where I would get it every week, because of when my dad worked, which was amazing when you're a kid. I think you realize that I think the majority of people, when they have a favorite player, it is someone like a goal scorer or like a wizard, you know, like a Gaza or a Lineker or a Shearer or somebody like that. And Leeds had Lee Chapman as their goal scorer at that sort of time, and I don't know, he was getting a bit old, and I think that he was too old for me to like him, which I don't know if that sounds really silly, but I was young, and then looking back now, it seems crazy because he scored so many goals for Leeds. And then just as I'm growing up, we go and sell him to Blackburn, and replace him with, it seems really odd, replace him with Brian Deane, who then pretty much became my favourite player. Not a direct replacement, obviously.
No.
Leeds sort of changed formation from a 4-4-2 to a sort of a 5-3-2, I think it was more.
Christmas tree.
Yeah, the Christmas tree, yeah. And ultimately they replaced him with Carlton Palmer, which I'll never understand that one. Never understand how he was, how that happened. What a strange series of events that is.
Yeah.
There was something about him just being kind of young and youthful, and I think that was part of the appeal for Gary Speed. The difference was that I looked more like David Batty than I looked like Gary Speed. And playing football in my mum's back garden with it would have been my older brother back then. We had this wall that we used as the goal, and then there's like a little like bedding wall on one side, and there's like a curb that goes onto a patio, and the little wall was Gary Speed, and the curb was David Batty. Just because like Gary Speed was taller than David Batty. That was it. And I was thinking how David Batty probably scored more goals in my backyard than he did playing professional football.
See, I don't remember him actually playing for Blackburn. So, like, did he go back to Leeds United then after that, or?
Yeah, he was at Blackburn for, I can't remember if it was 2 or 3 seasons, and then he went to Newcastle. And he was there for about 2 or 3 seasons as well, and then he went back to Leeds. But it's a shame because really that's sort of his. I think he was about 23, 24 when he went to Blackburn.
Yeah.
And it seems he was probably one of Leeds' highest paid players and seen as one of their best players. And the problem, I think the problem was, well, multiple aspects, but Leeds won the league in 92, and then the Premier League was formed, and Leeds did worse than Liverpool are doing this season and almost got relegated. We won. In fact, I don't think we won away from home all season, which is pretty abysmal. Can you believe that? Can you actually believe that?
Yeah.
Finished. I can't. I think it was 17th. I think it was 17th, and we had spent quite a bit of money that season, and we needed to recoup some of the costs. And I think Howard Wilkinson wanted to do like a mini rebuild type thing, and unfortunately, he was one of the ones to go. Like I said, we got Brian Dean in, and I love Brian Dean, so I was, and Rod Wallace started banging in goals, so it was distracting, But yeah, he was at Blackburn for that first season. Was the year, like I said, the year they won the league. I think that was 93, 94.
Yeah.
But he was injured for most of that. I think it was 4 or 5 games for them.
And then he went to Newcastle after that.
Yeah, and so Kenny Dalglish took him to Blackburn, and then I think Keegan took him to Newcastle, but Keegan wasn't there for long after he signed him, I don't think, maybe a year tops. And then he went back to Leeds, and Newcastle were in a bit of the doldrums. I think it was when Ruud Gullit was in charge, actually, which is also strange. Kind of forgot that happened. And then back to Leeds, I think just when Leeds needed David Batty. We had a lot of young players coming through, Woodgate and Smith, and Kuehl, still reasonably youngish, I guess. And it needed someone like that, like an old hand. And obviously we got into the UEFA Cup semi-final, Champions League semi-final. He had quite a few injuries in there, but still had a bit of the old magic. Still able to like stick his boot in and lay off a good pass.
Maybe just having that senior figure in the locker room was like huge.
I would have, I'd imagine that there's a lot of experience there, isn't there? I mean, by then he would have played 30 or so games for England as well. He'd obviously won the league with Leeds, sort of won the league with Blackburn, played for a Newcastle side that finished second a couple of times, I think. So there's obviously some ambition there. And he was a player that was able to get the crowd going on his own as well, which can make a big difference when you've got such a vociferous crowd like you do at Ellen Road.
Yeah.
Passionate crowd.
Who do you think his best central midfield partner was? Tough one.
Yeah, I mean, it has to be a Leeds player, doesn't it? Do you know what? Who I really liked, although I don't actually know how much they played together, was Olivier Dacour.
Yeah.
I mean, I should probably say Gary McAllister because in the league and stuff. But I don't know, something about Olivier Dacour. But I think maybe there was an element of similarity with their play, and Dacour was perhaps younger and had a bit more of a license to go forward and pick out some passes and stuff. But I bet I should probably go with McAllister.
Yeah, I suppose you'd have to say what was David Batty's best spell at Leeds United. Although, like I think you mentioned before, obviously his second spell was still, they got to the Champions League semi-final and whatnot.
I think he had a few too many injuries. The first spell, can't forget that Leeds won the second division, finished fourth, and then won the first division. So it would have to be.
Yeah.
As much as getting to the Champions League semi-final, and doing well in the Premier League, I feel like it doesn't really compare to winning the league and to winning 2 leagues. So.
Yeah, exactly. So you got to give it to old Gary the Mac.
Yeah, I mean that midfield four of Speed, Batty, McAllister, and Strachan is pretty legendary. And
then you had Yeboah, and I suppose it would have fluctuated, but I suppose Yeboah was the main sort of striker in that time, and then
Lee Chapman first of all,
and
then sort of Rod Wallace, Dean, Yeboah,
Cantona,
Brolin. Can't forget Thomas Brolin.
Yeah,
a few other random players.
You can't really miss Brolin on the pitch either, could you?
No, I still think he only played like because I'm trying to think how long he was with us, and I reckon it was probably at least 2 seasons. And then do you remember he went to Crystal Palace?
What, Thomas
Remember that?
Broley?
Yeah, he. I don't know where he was officially playing, but he got loaned to Crystal Palace about 2 or 3 years after he left us, and there was a weird incident in a match where we played them, and he sort of like went down holding his head, and they put on a bandage on his head, but it kept falling off. It was odd. It was odd. It was a really odd
Yeah,
moment. I'm sure there's a YouTube video with it on, just showing how bizarre it was. He was that was such a wasted player.
yeah,
Knee injuries, allegedly. Knee injuries and overindulgence.
yeah. Overindulgence in hamburgers apparently.
Allegedly.
Yeah, allegedly. But I mean, you mentioned your favourite assist. Was there a favourite goal? Because I mean, how many goals did Batty sort of score? Because
It's not many. I did look this
no.
up, and I accidentally closed my notes. Officially, 8. 9 if you include one he scored for England under 21s. Now, my favourite goal of his was one he scored for Newcastle, and it's a lovely goal. It is a lovely goal. I have to take you back to possibly the worst week of Neil Sullivan's professional career. Now, you may remember Neil Sullivan played in Gough for Wimbledon, and there's quite a famous goal that somebody scored against him from the halfway line.
Oh yeah.
That very same week, David Batty lobbed him from about 35, 40 yards.
Yeah.
And aesthetically, it was a nicer goal than the goal scored by the other gentleman. Sullivan sort of runs out towards the edge of the area as there's sort of like a ball played over the top. A Newcastle attacker and Wimbledon defender go towards it. And Neil Sullivan I think he sort of punches it out, but it doesn't go out too cleanly. And Batty hits it first time over Sullivan, and it goes in off the bar. And it's like a lovely finish. And yeah, so a massively underrated goal, and I think one that was massively overshadowed because it was only a few days after Beckham had pinged it in from the halfway line.
It's the old golden balls effect. I think it's because David Beckham had a lot more poster appeal.
Yeah,
unfortunately,
prettier hair, I think.
Yeah. I find it so funny how Wimbledon are essentially like the unluckiest side of the 90s, because they are the recipients of every classic amazing goal that was scored in the 90s. Because obviously you've got that Beckham goal, you've got the goal that you just mentioned. Now there was that one of the Yeboah bangers,
the one that he bounced off his knees,
which was essentially his, I think, because he scored that goal against Liverpool, which was really good, but the goal against Wimbledon was like just incredible, because there was a bit of like dribbling and like you say, the sort of like thigh juggling.
It looks impossible what he does.
Yeah,
when his thighs, Yeboah's thighs are like.
Yeah, because I always thought like Jimmy Floyd Hasbang. I always thought like, oh my god, the size of that guy's thighs. And then I remember looking back at Yeboah and like, nah, the guy's a monster. Whatever happened to Yeboah? He like just disappeared off the face of the planet.
Well, there was a rumor that he was older than he said he was. I don't know if you know, Yeboah's official date of birth is the 6th of the 6th, 66, which a lot of people think he made up.
Does that mean he's like Lucifer?
Yeah, definitely a link. I think George Graham said that he came back from pre-season training. I think he got a little knock and he put on a bit of weight. And
what club did he go to after Leeds then?
God, I did know that. Hamburger? Did he go back to Germany? Because he was at Eintracht Frankfurt in Germany. That's where Leeds signed him from.
Yeah.
I feel like it was another German club.
I'll look it up.
Was it Hamburg or?
So it says here, yeah, Hamburger SV. Yeah,
Oh, Hamburg! I got it right first time.
nice one. Yeah, so you're right, exactly right. He came from Frankfurt, a couple of years at Leeds, and then
I feel like we
back to
might have.
Hamburg.
I feel like we almost had him on loan before we actually signed it. There was a lot of. I remember there was a lot of talk. This is where I have really good memories of Match Magazine. There were so many rumours about strikers we were going to sign, and then we got this guy in from Germany who'd never heard of. I'd never heard of Ghana.
Mm.
I can show you where it is on a map actually now because of Yeboah. And he just came in and scored loads of goals. He was great.
Yeah, it was just a brilliant character as well. I just remember, I think, yeah, if you just sort of see these faces and these, and I remember them from all these goal magazines and football magazines that we had and sticker books like Merlin and Panini, and just seeing the likes of Yeboah celebrating those goals, and it's just what a thing to behold. It was just brilliant to see.
He scored a cracking goal against Monaco in the UEFA Cup. I think it was in Monaco, and I remember it not being on TV, but I can remember listening to it on the radio. And I only recently saw the goals, and one of them's an absolute beauty. Well, I think he smashes it in from like well outside the box into the top corner or something. Like absolutely pinged it in. And it was weird because it's something that I honestly don't think I'd thought about it in however many years that was now, 25 years or something. And I just, you on YouTube, you go down a rabbit hole, and I just saw Yeboah hat-trick against Monaco, or Leeds 3, Monaco 0, and I was thinking, is that when Yeboah scored a hat-trick? And clicked on it and watched it, and I was like, holy that's a nice goal.
Yeah. It's a shame in a way that he didn't have the sort of like dazzling kind of international or European career. But then
he had like a stellar 18 months, 2 years maximum, and then got a niggling injury, put on a bit of weight, got a new manager in who didn't fancy him, and we had that around that time. I mean, my timelines in my head is a little bit off, but we had Ian Rush on loan, and we had actually that was just before George Graham. Ian Rush and Mark Haitley on loan, and at the time they were both well into their 30s. And I'm sure I've read recently that Ian Rush actually might have signed on a free rather than on loan, because I think one of the reasons he agreed to sign for us was because he was promised he could become Leeds manager after Howard Wilkinson left. And that just blows my mind.
Yeah. Well, what happened there then?
He scored like one goal in about 50 games.
Yeah.
I don't know 50 games, but in 30 games or something, and vanished.
If you're interested in coming on the show for an Under the Floodlights special to talk about your favourite player or manager, please email the triplef2021@gmail.com or DM the triplef84 on Twitter. All contact details will be in the episode description. Hope you're all keeping safe, and thanks again for listening to the Triple F.
Yeah, well, I actually one of the points I know you want to talk about was like the impact on his career of missing that penalty. I know we talked about the penalty miss earlier, but I don't think it really had much of an impact. He, because after that, then he went. I'm not sure exactly how long after that he went back to Leeds from Newcastle, and Kevin Keegan became England manager, if you remember, and Keegan thought he was great. And I don't know if it was Keegan that said, oh no, because I think he would have had him at Newcastle, or maybe it was referring to Newcastle. I think it was Keegan, and he said, I didn't fully appreciate how good a footballer David Batty was till I saw him on the training pitch. And I think that's because, like Howard Wilkinson had put him into that role where he's sitting in front of the back four and he's sweeping up and giving the ball to somebody else. So I think I can understand that comment where he wouldn't have seen how good he was or what he could do. But he back to Leeds, and he was playing in the Euro 2000 qualifiers and playing in all the friendlies, and then what turns out to be his last England game against Poland. I can't say Poland. What's going on? Got sent off, and it looks a bit harsh actually if you watch it back. I would have thought yellow. It was quite near the end of the game as well, and then he got a little niggling injury not long after that, and he was obviously suspended for a few games, I think, and then got a little niggling injury, and then as he was coming back from that injury, he did his Achilles in, and he missed the rest of the season. So he missed Euro 2000, and by the time that was all over, I think Lampard had come into the England setup. I don't know if that means Steven Gerrard had as well. I'm not sure.
Possibly, yeah. I'd imagine.
No, Lampard as well. Not that I'm comparing them as similar players, because they're definitely not. But I think, England had sort of changed, especially because Euro 2000 as well was a bit of a disaster.
Yeah.
And then did we get Sven in after that? Was that when we got?
Sven was after Keegan, wasn't he? So.
And it was 2002. Was that Japan, South Korea?
Yeah.
So he would have been.
Because 2006 was Germany, wasn't it? Germany, Holland, was it? Yeah.
Which one did we not qualify for?
2006, wasn't it? I think.
It was one of them.
Yeah, because 2010 was South Africa, obviously.
South Africa.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Well, don't remind me.
It was. No, it was the Vuvuzelas.
Yeah. Fucking Vuvuzelas.
That was so terrible. Whose idea was that?
I don't know.
They should have pumped in fake crowd sounds like they do now.
If you could sort of pick any Leeds United player that plays similarly to David Batty, I mean, who would you kind of say it was? I guess like that plays in this current Leeds United setup right now.
Oh well, I mean, the obvious example is Calvin Phillips.
Yeah, I was thinking him.
I mean, they don't. I mean, he plays in that sort of area to Batty, but it's not the same sort of role.
No.
But he's definitely the closest. He was obviously from the local area as well, and he's come up through the youth system, so there's a easy comparison there. But also Calvin Phillips likes to tackle. He's quite happy to leave his mark on somebody, and he can pass the ball. I don't think that does either of them justice, really.
Yeah, but I mean, maybe in the sense that, like you were sort of saying with David Batty, he was more than just a tackler, more than just an industrious player. And I think that's something with Calvin Phillips. You can see that he's definitely, and maybe this is where Calvin Phillips deviates a bit from Batty, is that it's quite obvious that Phillips has that more to his game and is more of a rounded player. Whereas with Batty, it almost appeared to be a bit of a dirty secret that the man can actually play football.
That's a really interesting way of putting it. I think that I have to be honest, and I don't know a Leeds fan who wouldn't say the same, but until Bielsa took over at Leeds, I didn't know that Calvin Phillips could play like Calvin Phillips plays.
Okay.
I think that is a huge...
So the David
record himself.
So the David Batty comparisons are pretty relevant then.
in a way, actually, because the impact a manager has on a player and on a team has changed so much since Bielsa took over at Leeds. I don't know if fans of other teams, especially in the Premier League, realise that the majority of our players, the players who are playing every week in the Premier League and are playing well, are the same players who struggled to take us to 15th in the Championship. They're the same players.
Wow.
We have Liam Cooper, who cost a couple of $100K from Chesterfield, and the Leeds United fans' nickname for him was League One Liam, because they didn't think he was good enough for the Championship.
Yeah.
And I personally, I like that is Calvin Phillips is a great example, because he was sort of like a midfielder, and you didn't really know what his role was. He was a central midfielder, and he scored a couple of goals, but then he didn't score for a while, and he might have scored a goal, and it just sort of, he was a midfielder who came through the youth ranks. Never in a million years would you make any sort of comparison to David Batty. And I think Bielsa, I cannot speak highly enough of Bielsa being able to not only identify a player's strengths and their weaknesses, but also getting them to believe in themselves.
Yeah.
And it would be so interesting to see David Batty with Bielsa as a manager. I mean, I mentioned his honesty in his autobiography, and he says that he's so honest, and he says about how Howard Wilkinson's team talks bored him, so he just sort of stopped listening, and he didn't like all the moves they worked on and things. Now that is something that I know Leeds under Bielsa work on a lot, so that makes me think Batty wouldn't have liked it. But I guess you never know. If you get a player to buy into the
process,
the process, the plan, then that's it. I think that's half the battle as a manager. You have to get the players to believe. And I think just trying to match up the player with the manager, it's difficult. But when you've got you have fans of teams kind of saying, the manager needs more time, and things like, that player, he doesn't show enough desire. Like a couple of years ago, I'd have been like, if he's obviously not interested, get rid of him, or the manager's doing a rubbish job, get rid of him. It's all his fault. And I don't know, I've really changed my thinking about what a manager can do.
Thank you so much for listening to the Triple F. If you could please drop a like on our Facebook page, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and follow us on Twitter, that would be massively appreciated. Hope you're all keeping safe, and thanks again for listening to the Triple F.